My name is Dylan, and welcome to the Abandonment Prevention Project, where we adopt, train, and rehome abandoned dogs. Our goal when looking at the types of tools that we're going to use and the type of techniques that we're going to use is, will it work for any dog? Will it work for the 20-pound dog? Will it work for the 140-pound dog? Because if I don't have a system that works all-encompassing, then I can't really give you advice that's going to work for your dog when I don't know what dog you have. Now, the most important tool that we use is the one that we're going to use for physical communication, which is their collar or whatever you're going to have at the end of your leash. Off. I choose a collar, and I never use a harness unless I'm trying to have my dog pull. So we will sometimes teach some dogs that need to get a lot of energy out, like pointers, how to pull bikes and sleds and things like that, because it's fun. It's a way to have a sport with your dog, and there's uses for that. If I'm not trying to teach my dog to pull, or I don't want to have that dynamic, then I'm going to use a collar. If I choose to communicate physically with a harness, I'm taking out all of the potential positives that I can have from teaching my dog to pull things. So that's one reason why we don't use it. But the other reason is it just makes a lot more sense for your dog to communicate with their neck area. Because one, if I do things like our e-brake, where I pull back, if it was at the center of her back, I would have to pull way back here in order to have her be in the same position that I can have her fairly easily by just grabbing. It's a lot easier. This is the line that I'm trying to hold. So if I'm holding her back with this, I've got to be doing this sort of thing with my arm, and I don't want to do that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's a lot less clear because dogs naturally want to balance themselves out by pulling against the thing that's making them off balance when it's connected to their shoulder and chest area. So there's multiple reasons where it doesn't make sense instinctually and functionally to use a harness, and that's why we choose not to use a harness. Now, will our techniques work with a flat collar or a martingale collar? Yes, they will. It's just going to be less clear than a plastic prong collar, which we have these little spikes on. Here, I'll give you guys a better look. So it has these little spikes, and these are meant to simulate a dog's teeth so that when I give this communication, it's the same as if another dog is communicating with them, so they understand it instinctually that it's communication. And I am not ever teaching my dog to pull and have this tension on the leash and we're still moving forward. That would teach the dog that they are on the rope, that they can pull, just like we do with harness skills. Instead, we want to have them, if they feel it, stop, turn around, assume that we're going the opposite direction. They're not bad for feeling it. They just didn't pay attention. So they felt the end, and it's the check-in. If they keep me in the corner of their eye, then they'll never feel it. They'll move how I move. It's their responsibility to understand that they need to pay attention to me when they're on this walk, not I move and pay attention to them. My dog is not feeling a collar except for when it's telling them you need to back up or turn around to set them up for success. Can I do these same exact techniques where I let her go, she's not paying attention, she feels it, she turns around with a martingale or flat collar? Yes, I absolutely can, but there's two negatives to that. One is it's less clear communication, so it's going to take an average of 3 to 5 times as long for that dog to learn it on a martingale or flat collar than it will on a plastic prong collar, because the plastic prong collar is a very distinct feeling that is natural to them to understand what it is. Furthermore, the flat collar, they might go, I mean, I'm tough enough to power through and I'm motivated to keep going this direction, so I'm just going to keep going this direction. They don't care that you are trying to communicate with them. They are going to push through, and you might actively be teaching them to push through if your technique isn't good enough to create a no-fail environment with that tool. And if it is good enough, it'll still take you 3 times as long to achieve the same result that this collar can, that doesn't hurt them whatsoever, because it's just very clear they're not bad. They just were wrong about the direction that we were going. So they need to pay attention. And now it's this game. I'm providing a very clear puzzle to the dog, and that's why we choose to use this. I can get a dog in 20, 25 minutes to respect the rules of the environment through clear physical communication, whereas it might take an hour on a flat collar. Furthermore, let's say I'm dealing with a dog that has over-threshold tendencies. They're reactive or something like that, or even a dog that's not reactive, but once in a blue moon, maybe he would get a certain smell and become over threshold. We never expected it to happen, but it did, sort of situation. If I'm not using all of the tools to set me up for success in that situation, then I'm not being a responsible handler. I don't want to sacrifice the safety of my dog or other people's dogs, or not be able to put my dog in an environment that they could if I was willing to use the correct tools. So the correct tools in this subject is the collar that will motivate them to stop if they decide to go over threshold, where a flat collar, maybe they'll just power through and not care. But that also goes along with soft muzzles. So if I have a dog that isn't as social as I would like them to be, and they need more experience socializing, and we need to do it in a safe way, then we'll use a soft muzzle. We might need to use a regular muzzle and then graduate to a soft muzzle. But some of the things that we're looking for in a soft muzzle is it to be as close and as similar to a regular muzzle as we can. We want them to be able to still drink water and eat out of this, be able to take treats, but not enough to like grab my forearm and latch on. So the dog could still nip and everything, but we're heavily reducing the chance that the dog is going to send another dog to the hospital. And then we only introduce a dog that might need a soft muzzle to socialize with other dogs that we're very confident won't escalate the situation. So I'm going to socialize a dog that's kind of on that border by desensitizing them and getting them comfortable with the soft muzzle, and then introducing them to a dog that if they nipped at that dog, that other dog would separate from the situation and there wouldn't be a dog fight. So that's why we're going to use soft muzzles. And you want the type of soft muzzle that has the line over the bridge and the two on the side, so that it can be secure around the skull, not just around the ears. So you really want to make sure that you have the perfectly fit soft muzzle. These are on Amazon for like $20. Highly recommend them. But if they don't have this guy, I don't buy them. I've tried some other ones, and they tend to slip off when you need them to work the most. So I need to think about, okay, what tools are going to create a no-fail environment for my dog in order to give my dog the absolute best life they can. For some dogs, that is with an e-collar. From my experience, I would say that when I take in untrained 1-year-olds, it's 1 out of every 4, 1 out of every 5 dogs I end up needing to use an e-collar with to teach them out and off and come. The I'm away, I don't teach any of my basic commands that I can just teach through proper communication, but the ones that require the dog to be away from me and have the freedom and choice, about 20-25% of dogs need that extra responsibility and accountability once you give them that freedom. And the option would either be don't give them that freedom, or use the collar that allows them to learn in that environment. And then I would say that half of those dogs end up needing it long term, and the other half you only need to use it for 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on the dog, but it's relatively short time in the grand scheme of things, where other dogs need that accountability for long term, whether it be because of social interactions and making sure that they are safe when they get overly excited with different groups of dogs that they may be put in. And then I have the choice, okay, I don't want to use e-collars. Well, then I have to take away potential freedoms and lifestyles. So I have to ask myself the question of, is this dog's life going to be better if I put the e-collar on and have a way to keep them accountable in that situation? Or is the tool a negative enough response to that dog to where it's more responsible for me to just accept that that dog isn't going to be a dog that can be in that environment? And depending on the dog, that answer is different. I've met a lot of dogs that can have a very healthy pack play mentality with large groups of dogs and be able to go to a dog park safely with an e-collar, but they might not be 100% safe without an e-collar. So if I want my dog to be able to have the lifestyle of playing with other dogs, they need to have their e-collar on to keep everyone safe. And then we have to properly use our e-collar, which will be in another video, because it's almost always the opposite of what you think is right. And most dog trainers use them irresponsibly and essentially use them as electroshock therapy tools, where they teach the dogs how to navigate an invisible maze of life through shocking them anytime they do something wrong, which we don't want to do. We want to use the tool to accelerate the behaviors that they already know when they are away from us, and we cannot possibly physically communicate with them without using that tool and a low enough threshold to where they will acknowledge it, but not harm them to the best of our abilities. So to recap, physical communication is the most important communication, and I need it to be practical and clear to my dog. That's why we use these things, not to harm our dogs. If you're using your physical communication to punish your dog for an action, you're doing it wrong, and please let us go over it and teach you better on how to use physical communication to communicate and accelerate behavior with choice, not punish your dog. It's not practical to communicate with my dog from the center of their back, and it's because they're on 4 legs, so they need to keep balance. So when one leg gets tilted, they naturally recorrect because of how their body mechanics work. It has nothing to do with the dog being undisciplined. It's about balance in that scenario, which doesn't happen with the collar. Furthermore, it makes a lot more sense to physically control the dog from the collar position with the techniques that we use. Will they work on a harness? They're harder, but they will work. It's just going to take 5 times as long. Will our techniques work with a martingale collar or a flat collar? Yes, but you run the risk of being unsafe. And when your dog goes to a certain threshold point, maybe the flat collar can slip off their head where this one will not slip off the head. Maybe the dog won't care about your physical communication because they're over threshold, where they would care about your physical communication if it had more sensation, because dogs are tough. And while a lot of people want to tell you any sort of feeling that they could imagine is going to be stressful or hard on the dog is going to traumatize them, it's just not true. You've seen 2 dogs play and wrestle with each other. They can get pretty intense and rough and rowdy, and they don't think that other dog's trying to harm them. They're having the time of their lives. Dogs are very tough creatures, and a little physical communication, as long as it's not malicious and I'm not trying to punish, I'm trying to communicate, is not going to traumatize my dog. If you think that it's going to traumatize the dog, you've probably just never played a sport that's kind of hard before. When putting dogs in situations that they're not already adapted to, it's the most responsible thing for me to use all of the tools that's best going to set my dog up for success and be safe for everyone involved. That means using collars that are most likely to work and give clear physical communication, even when my dog is over threshold, and use the safety equipment like a muzzle or soft muzzle or e-collar to make sure that in any situation we have the answer for, and we're not just gambling that our dog's not going to run off, our dog's not going to get mad at another dog's not going to get mad at our dog, and now we have no way of interacting in that environment. We're just letting our dogs handle it. That's extremely irresponsible. Maybe there's a person with a particular smell that my dog has never smelled before. I've never seen my dog be aggressive towards another human, but they get this smell, they target that person, they're not okay with that person, and I don't have the tools to get my dog out of that scenario. That can equal the death of my dog, and I'm not willing to risk that. So I'm going to use the tools that will guarantee that in that situation, that probably will never happen, but could, my dog is still going to go home safely and not be taken away by the police. So that's why I use these tools and take the responsibility very seriously for my dog and others by setting them up for success and being willing to use the tools that are going to create a no-fail environment.